Hey everybody, this is Hob.
And I'm Jamie.
And you're watching
Dutch and Dragons with our special doggo guests.
Yep.
With
That's
the
Fraser.
Labrador in the
and
corner.
a Mopey Labrador in the corner named Toby. Today we are doing the leftovers box because, well, it's the end of the month. So, without further ado, question.
First question from the leftover box. Dun, 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 dun. Ooh, I ripped it.
She doesn't know her own strength. She just tore the paper violently.
Ah! That didn't rip. Does crafting a story require me to do character voices? Ooh, voice acting.
Voice acting. Voice acting is very optional. Speaking in character can even be optional. For a lot of people, it's sort of a struggle to get into the voice of the character. So doing accents and things like that can really be difficult for especially new dungeon masters, even some longtime dungeon masters. I often speak instead of as the character. I will say the person says whatever it is that they say. I won't use voices simply because I sound like a giant weirdo. I'm terrible at them.
I do the voices and the accents.
I'm legit. I'm terrible at them. I'm not good at them. I don't try.
One of the best pieces of advice that I got when it comes to like doing character voices and voice acting is to listen to audiobooks. Lots of people who narrate audiobooks don't change their voices drastically. They just, if it's a girl, they might heighten the pitch a little bit, but you can usually tell who's speaking, even though they don't do much with their voice.
True.
And really, that's all you have to do for Dungeons & Dragons.
Very true. But in general, no. You don't have to do, like, crazy voices or anything like that.
Nope.
You can add some inflection. You can add some speech differences to differentiate the characters. Everybody has, what are they? Speech tics and things like that.
Yeah.
Things that they do that differentiate them from other people. So that's also a good way to do it.
Yep.
But there you go. Moving on.
Next question. Once you call time of death on an adventure, how do you get the game back to being productive?
Oh, this is going back to our when is it time to call it quits episode, isn't it?
So once you've called the game quits, once you've said this campaign is not working for whatever reason, how do you then move into something more successful?
I would generally go back to first finding out from your players what went wrong, what created the difficulties, what broke the game in a way that resulted in them not having enjoyment and you not having enjoyment, and really take stock of the game and the sessions and everything that went on that kind of contributed to the death of this particular game.
Yeah, what wasn't working for you?
Once you've done that, reassess, reevaluate, get your players back together for a new session 0, make an agreement with each other to do things differently, iterate, and continue on from there.
Yep.
You might even be able to restart the same campaign from where you called it quits at, but generally not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So I just let the sleeping dogs lie, as it were.
Yep. Next question. Bum, bum, bum. Excuse me. Are there political themes, topics, or tropes that you should avoid in your campaign? That is a good question.
It is a good question. It's also sort of a loaded question.
It is.
So no, there aren't. But also, yes, there are.
This goes back to it being very personal to you and the players. Is there something that you are fairly sure that your players are not going to appreciate?
Right, and talk with your players.
Those.
I always talk with your players, and I can't stress that enough. We can't stress that enough. I'm going to adjust this just a little bit because there's some glare coming in. I can't stress enough how important it is to talk to your players about what's going to happen in your game and the themes that are going to be included in your game, because when you have that discussion, when you're open, transparent, honest about it, it gives them the opportunity to express any potential concerns that they have, and gives you a chance to try to address them and or remove those themes from your game.
Right.
And that's it. It's all about respect.
It is. Next question. How Machiavellian is too Machiavellian?
Her.
Oh my gosh.
Pretty much everything she does is too Machiavellian.
Not everything. So, but a lot of things. At one point in time, I had this campaign idea, and it was convoluted AF. It was like hinging Game of Thrones convolution. And I started session 1, and after session 1, I went, oh God, my players are not going to pick up on what I'm throwing down. I got a little too convoluted in this. And so I went back really fast. Like after session 1, I knew this was going to be a disaster. So I went back and I trimmed that down like a mad person to make it fit my players a bit better. So my thing would be, if your players are missing it, it's too Machiavellian.
There you go.
Alright, and I have one caveat for the Machiavellian thing. If your intention is that things are happening in the background that your players may or may not be aware of, that they may or may not be able to stop, depending on if they pick up the clues, then by all means, go for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Alright, next question. Ooh, this is a really big question.
It is a really big question.
Yeah.
That is like giant font big question.
I know.
Too.
How do you handle the PCs? How do you handle the PC that's created with the intention of subverting your game before it's even started? Okay, so back to character creation.
Yeah,
questions.
and this goes back to disruptive play, disruptive PCs, and it touches on min-maxing and a few other things. So
first of all, I think we should clarify what we mean by that.
So I had we have a player in our game, and we love him, but he has a tendency to actively try to create a character that is going out of its way to break some aspect or circumvent some aspect of the game. So, for example, we were doing a hex crawl game, and he created a character that its entire purpose was designed to circumvent every potential hazard of a hex crawl, right down to making camping impossible to interrupt. So, everything that he was doing was oriented around creating problems for me as the game master to try to bypass, to be able to make the game fun. And it doesn't mean you can't bypass it, but he was actively going out of his way to make the game more difficult for me and less entertaining in general, because a hex crawl without all of the things that go in a hex crawl is no fun. It's really boring.
Now, I want to put a caveat into this. There is a difference between smart character building and game breaking.
True.
We have players who are trying to do really smart character building, which is good. You know, if you're going to go into a hex crawl, maybe having someone who can cast Goodberry is a good thing. But the problem becomes, I want to make the distinction. The problem becomes with the player. So if a player makes a smart character in order to circumvent different things and is having a blast doing it, that is one thing. If if the same player makes the same character, but then sits around and is surly because they are not having fun,
because they've broken the game,
because they have circumvented the aspects that would make it fun, that's problematic.
Yes, I agree.
So you kind of have to use some judgment. Are they smart character building and it's going to be a fun time? Or are they game-breaking character building and they're going to be surly or salty because now they're not having as much fun as they would have had if they had engaged the game. And it's all about attitude.
Absolutely. I always try to assume good intentions when somebody hands me a character that I can see will create some difficulties or could potentially cause some of the fun to go out of the game. I will assume best intentions, but if the player then becomes surly about it, I will do things to circumvent what they have broken, and I will return the fun to the game by hook or by crook.
All right, next question.
Hold on. Coffee. All right, so now we're back, and it didn't take you any time at all for that to happen.
We have two more.
We have two more questions, so we're going to try and drag it out.
What do you do when your PCs side with the bad guys of a political theme, or the bad side?
So
Let them be bad guys.
So far, this hasn't happened intentionally in any of my games. But there have been tales in the past.
I'm waiting for it to happen.
And it may very well happen at some point in time where the dungeon master or the game master has the PCs have fought their way to where the main antagonist is, and the main antagonist gives a rousing and heartfelt speech and sways the players and the player characters to their side.
Da, da, da.
So what do?
They aim to misbehave.
Well, roll with it. I mean, literally, you take and you readjust your campaign and put the PCs on the side of your antagonist / villain. That doesn't, and the reason I say that is because an antagonist does not necessarily have to be evil or inherently bad. It may be that the antagonist is the rightful ruler of a country and they're trying to take their country back. And if the PCs choose to believe that that's the case and side with that character, then they, in their minds, are doing what they feel and or believe is right and correct in the world, and you should let them.
Maybe as your PCs have been adventuring, their motivations have gone to power and money, and the bad guy offers more of it.
It's also a possibility. And you can also, it allows you to introduce interesting things like player double cross at the end. Or, the villain turns out to actually be a villain. He was lying the whole time, and now you have a whole different double cross. And there's all kinds of things that you can do with it. So you can have a lot of fun with it. Don't take it as a game-ending event. Don't
try and push your players into being on one side or the other.
Right. Let your players decide and run with whatever they decide.
And let
you'll have fun. They'll have fun, and it'll be a great game. And I think you'll be surprised at how great a game it is.
Oh yeah, some of the best moments in the game are when players just totally surprise me.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, I did not expect that. Okay.
All right, what do we got left?
All right, last question is, how do you balance the difficulty of allowing your players' characters to do cool, fun things?
How do you balance difficulty of allowing your players and their characters to do cool and fun things?
Because we talked about...
How do you balance it with what? We did not write that question well.
Well, we didn't. Okay, so let me go out. Let me give you an example. In our first...
poor question writing has bit us in the butt.
It's bit us in the butt, and it happens. Our gnomes... in one of our campaigns, and I think we talked about this, effectively tried to ride each other into battle.
Yes.
That was really cool, and it was kind of a fun idea. And the first time they did it successfully, and it was really hilarious. The second time they did it, they did not manage to do it successfully, but how do you, as a game master, on the fly go, okay, so they want to jump off a building and stab the bad guy in the eyeball on their way down and land without getting hurt. What do I have them roll for that? And how hard should that be?
Right.
So how do you balance, like, the cooler the thing, obviously the harder the challenge rating. So, and you're doing this on the fly. There's no book for.
So, well, and there might actually be a book for writing gnomes. Craig, could you sit down, please? Or lay down, please?
No, he wants to be part.
Yeah.
He's got something to say about this
Thank
topic.
you, sir. It's probably Bork.
It's probably Bork.
That's
Probably
probably
has
what it
Borks
is.
to
He
say.
probably has Borks to say. So the problem with the really cool things that our players will want to do
Let me put more of these.
is that there isn't necessarily a hard, fast rule for any of that. I'm being treat bombarded here. And so you have to take into account as many factors as possible, but you have to be able to do it quickly. So, and I don't remember exactly what page they're on, but there are some sample difficulty classes based on certain types of kind of standard activities. And so I kind of use that information to go, okay, this is X amount harder than kicking in a door, right? So they want to kick in a door and like knock somebody down behind it because they know that there's somebody right behind the door. Okay, so you've got to kick in the door and you've got to do it with enough force that it does more than just bump the person out of the way. So this then becomes a DC 25 strength check and they're at disadvantage. Or it's a DC 20 strength check and they're at disadvantage. And so you kind of have to raise and lower the difficulty, and then adding disadvantage in can change how difficult it is. So with disadvantage, it becomes exponentially harder to succeed.
And I would also take into account the player character's background, their
general
passives,
skill set,
their
passives.
general skill set. Like, is it likely that they would know how to do this? Well, if you're an assassin rogue trying to jump off of a height and stab somebody in an eyeball, that is going to be much more likely than, say, what's another kind of rogue that would be less likely? The assassin would be more likely than
just a regular good old-fashioned thief.
Yeah, than just a regular good old-fashioned thief. I'm sorry, I've got a bad cold today,
So, anyhow, the point is
and I'm gassy.
we're full of lovely sounds today.
I am.
So in general,
nothing is coming out of my face at the moment. We're good.
So we're probably in really good shape. So in general, what you want to do is you want to take into account as many factors as you can, and it doesn't have to be perfect. There's no requirement that your DC setting be perfect, but try to be consistent.
Yeah.
If kicking in a door and knocking the person down behind it is a DC 15 or a DC 20 with disadvantage, it has to be that every single time.
Yep.
Or equivalent to that.
Yeah.
Every single time. So if an activity is something, so jumping off of a 2-story building to stab an opponent in the top of their head and murder them in very quick succession without taking any damage is going to be extremely difficult. But it's going to be extremely difficult every single time it happens, because they're going to want to use it again and again and again. And there has to be consequences, like I've said, that are equivalent to the difficulty. So if they fail, they're going to take damage, they're going to break limbs, they're going to potentially open themselves up to counterattack from their opponent, and death, because they've miscalculated, they've made a mistake, they've done something unsafe.
Side effects may include mortal wounds, stabbings, and death.
Very much so. But that's all the questions that we have today.
Yep.
So our next episode is going to begin the 12 Adventures of Christmas.
It's just the 12 weeks of adventure. It's sort of Christmas themed, but
whatever.
D&D is super inclusive. It's not just Christmas.
Anyhow, we're beginning the run-up to the holiday season.
Yep.
And so over the next 12 weeks, we're going to be talking about each of the primary Dungeons & Dragons character classes, starting with, what did we decide? Druid is first on the list?
Druid's first
starting
up,
with the Druid character class. So, As always, if you have any questions, comments, suggestions, please include them in the section where appropriate below. If you enjoy what we're doing, please click like and subscribe and click the little bell so you get notifications. If you hate what we're doing, click subscribe anyways and enjoy watching or hating us, whatever it is that you do.
Thumbs up for more puppies in the videos.
Thumbs up for more puppies in the videos, which they've both decided that they are no longer involved in this video. But thank you for joining us, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Have fun storming the castle.